March 24th, 2015, The Ochelli Effect. I'm your host, Chuck Ochelli, on UCY.TV. Oh boy, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I can't hardly breathe, but hey, it's been fun. Of course, I laid down after doing the 2 shows Saturday night and had not actually gotten up for very much ever since until today. So, there it is. Lovely, lovely stuff. Of course, it might have something to do with that extra heavy spraying overhead. Who knows? Anyway, I already mentioned the date. Man, oh man. You know, a lot of feedback came from the Saturday night show, and want you guys to know that I really do appreciate all that. And I want to say thanks to everybody who decided to tune in using their little applications on their fondle slab of choice, as it were, my favorite statement. Or if you've gone to ucy.tv/TOE and you're there hanging out and looking at the chat room, wondering if you should jump in, well, probably not unless you're fully ready. So, good evening to everybody. Oh, a couple of quick notes really fast before I talk about my guest, who is going to actually be on for 2 hours. And I think it is worthy of the 2-hour slot discussion we're going to have. A couple of things. Rudy Dent called in on the Saturday night show. He was a firefighter at Ground Zero who actually got there after the 2 towers fell, but before Building 7 fell. I have actually talked to Mr. Dent now off the air, and he is going to be a guest on this show as well. Okay, just for your clarification out there. On Thursday, we're going to cover the mythology in the JFK case, and on Saturday, Joan Mellon will be on, and I think she was, well, I know she was my very first guest on this show, and, you know, that's Dr. Joan Mellon, PhD, Temple University professor, etc., etc. Guess what? We're going to discuss some topics that are going to range from a very brief stop on the JFK assassination, but you know what else we're going to get into is the USS Liberty. And why? Because she's currently writing a book on the subject. We'll also discuss Mac Wallace and a whole lot of other topics because Joan is an incredibly diverse biographer and author and just a really great communicator. And I'm extremely privileged to have her on, so she'll be on this Saturday. Okay, so now on to today's foray into what the mainstream and other alternative media outlets don't want to bother to tell you and don't want to allow to be, expounded upon on their air. You guys have heard Ariana Love on my show before. We discussed various things, of course, mostly Middle Eastern related. We discussed, the situation in Syria, what was occurring. But Ariana made an interesting point to me in a like little private communication about her firsthand accounts that she could give regarding what is occurring and what has occurred and what continues to occur in Gaza, in Palestine. I have said this over and over again that the Israeli state is absolutely criminal, and I think my point is well made anywhere that you want to look that isn't being completely controlled, by the mainstream or by others who wish to divert and deflect from the reality of what's actually happening over there. So, without any further ado, and without me prattling on in my feverish way anymore, I do want to bring on Ariana Love, and we're going to discuss this, and I'm going to let her tell her story, and I have really no idea of the details. So we're going to learn this together, and I think that this is something important that we need to recognize the true depth of what's going on over there. So, Ariana, how are you tonight?
Hi, Chuck. I'm good. I'm prepared, ready, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Definitely happy to have you. I'm sorry I'm not 100%, but what can I do?
Right, that's life.
Yeah, exactly. But that has nothing to do with your story or what it is you're going to tell here. And I'm going to try to guide this a little bit. We didn't even discuss how we're going to present this. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to start off with, what it is that you were doing over there anyway, because you're not from the Gaza Strip. You're not from Palestine. You weren't born there, right?
Right. I'm
So,
from Northern California.
from Northern California. So, what is it that brought you there in the first place?
Okay, well, it goes back to when I left America in 2012 and I returned to live in Finland because I didn't feel safe anymore with this tyrannical government that we have. We did lose all of our freedom in America after the passing of the Patriot Act bill. It nullified our rights under the Constitution and Bill of Rights. So I made the decision to return back to Finland to live where it's peaceful and safe. And I began researching into 9/11 in 2012. And that's where I discovered the Israeli connection, their involvement in 9/11 through, their Mossad front urban moving systems. And this was the thing that blasted my mind open. And about 2 months later, after stumbling upon the Israeli connection, which I was shocked. I had no idea that Israel was a terrorist organization and that they're doing, even a fraction of the things that they are doing. I had no idea. So it was an awakening for me. And then 2 months later was this Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012. And because of social media, because of Facebook, I was able to see citizens in Gaza posting photographs and telling their stories and what they're witnessing. And it was the most shocking. It affected every cell in my body. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I was sick, witnessing what these people are going through. And I was amazed that I hadn't heard about it sooner.
Well, why is it that stuck out to you? There are people that could say there's a great deal of suffering in the world. There's a lot of places that could speak to you where people are being injured, where people are being oppressed throughout the planet, honestly. So why
Yeah.
is it that Gaza in particular stuck out to you?
Well, it's so horrific what's happening there. When you look at it, Gaza is a part of Palestine, and it is a population of almost 2 million people that are completely caged in with walls surrounding. They cannot come and go freely. They have nowhere to go. They're trapped inside like a prison, like a concentration camp. And I just was amazed that this could be blocked from my view and from other people's view. And of course, the reason I discovered is the media programming. And the fact that, if you do a little research, 97% of the world media is owned by Zionist corporations. So they have been implementing their agenda for a very long time. And America is the most brainwashed society on earth because the mind control programming was first introduced in America in 1945 through MK Ultra. And so therefore, we are really blocked out. I could not find answers to my questions when I was in America. You have to know what to ask. Everything is online. Everything is available. Everything under the sun that you can imagine. You just Google it. But you have to know what to ask.
Well,
And unless somebody tells you,
Mhm.
tips you off, or plants that seed in your mind, you're not even going to know to ask.
To give the unsort of initiated listener an idea. I mean, do you know anything about the founding of the State of Israel
Yes.
and the history of Zionism as well?
Yes, I do. I really do. I've been researching this for 3 years. There's always something to learn. I swear, I research every day.
Well, I wonder if you
And
could give people sort of a brief idea of
okay.
what it is that you learned. Because look, there was Palestine, prior to, as far as my understanding goes, prior to a proclamation by the English. Okay,
Yes.
there was this place called Palestine, and of course Gaza is actually a beautiful strip of land, um, a rather wondrous natural place that really looks to me more like it should be made into a resort area, if anything. I mean, it's
Definitely.
this wonderful area, and the people there are also another misconception among a lot of people in this country for sure, is that there's just a Muslim sort of group there, and that's it, because we had the programming for a long time, being faced with the Yasser Arafat imagery, with the concept of the PLO, with the concept of the what was it, the Democratic Front for Palestinian, whatever. I mean, all of these different organizations that were supposedly, that were terrorist organizations, that were enemies to us, that were supposed to be, definitely they were way over there, so we didn't have to worry about them. But they were
Mhm.
definitely the unfriendly element to the American people. That was the programming that was given to us for generations,
Yes.
you know. But the truth is a whole lot different. So I wonder if you wanted to just speak to the sort of way that land was sort of taken over, and
Okay.
how the state of Israel got there in the first place.
Okay. Well, Palestine before 1948, Palestine was a place. You have to understand, Palestine belongs to everyone. It was a land for all people. It was famously known all throughout the Middle East as a land for all people. And this is the spirit in which the people exist. The Palestinian people are the most welcoming people. I mean, things have changed. They've been under occupation for 70 years, and this has created an incredible impact on their civilization. But that was the spirit that they had. They had no army, they had no defense whatsoever. These are native people. And this is the argument that Israel often uses, is that they were not the state. They were not a country. They had no but they did have courthouse, they did have, railroad, train station. They had what else? It was a thriving, rich economy based on agriculture and trade. And it was like a way station, like a central location throughout all of the Middle East. And Jerusalem was like the capital of the Middle East because of Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the most holy sites for Muslims. And of course, the majority population in Palestine are Muslims. They're Sunni Muslims, and they're not extremists, not at all, because they're not a sect of Islam. They are just the original Muslims. They're following the Quran and they're following Islam as it was taught to us. So they didn't go creating any sects or dividing into sects. Everybody in Palestine believes the same way. And this is one thing that makes them very tight with each other and that makes the resistance strong, considering that they're fighting with homemade weapons. Um, so Zionism has existed, oh my gosh, since the days of the pharaohs. And it is based on, gosh, this is very difficult to explain. It's a very, very ancient practice, which I consider to be fully satanic, because it allows for adults to have sex with children who are as young as 3 years old in one day. And basically, Zionism, it was an occult practice, an occult ritual practice of, sadistic, satanic things that somehow intermingled with the Jewish faith from way, way back. I mean, we're talking the days of Pharaohs. Now, more recently, if we forward a little bit back to Babylonian times, somebody actually wrote down these practices on a document called the Talmud, a book, which is basically what the Jewish people were following before Moses came. So they were following the Talmud. This was their practice. And Moses came as a prophet to preach to the Jewish people. So the prophecies say to, maybe to save them because they were lost. And, a lot of the Jewish people, the majority, did not listen to his message, and they continued to follow the Talmud. And the Talmud has been revised many, many times. The last time it was revised was 100 years ago. Now the Torah is a book that was inspired by the birth and the message of Moses. And it was written by rabbis, and it was included into the Talmud. So the Jewish faith is a mix, and you have very few Jews who are following the Torah. Maybe 2%. Maybe there's a large percentage of Jews who don't even know what they're following anymore. They're maybe not religious, and they're maybe good people, but they're going along and remaining silent to the injustices and the crimes of the Israeli state because maybe they don't want to go against the grain. Maybe they're afraid. Who knows? But the majority of the rabbis in Israel, 98% of them have publicly announced that they are Zionists. Now, the difference between Judaism and Zionism, Judaism follows the Torah, supposedly. I mean, this is technically what it's supposed to be. Zionists follow the Talmud. Now, if you look at the laws of the state of Israel, they're founded on the Talmud, on the principles in the Talmud. For example, if a Jewish life is threatened, that Jew has the right to kill that person, even if it's a child, if they feel threatened. There's no qualification, no legal ramifications. It's just if they feel threatened. The Jewish people are allowed to lie to non-Jews. So when you look at the Israeli state and their policies and how they operate and behave and what they release to the public, it's all lies. You can't trust them at all. So this is what we have going on. Now, as far as like the history, well, the British were occupying Palestine first, and they basically gave the land to the Jews, the Zionists, because who owns 80% of Israel or occupied Palestine technically are the Rothschilds, the Rothschilds family. They own about 80% of it, and they created the state of Israel. The Rothschilds did. The Rothschilds, the Balfour Declaration was a document that, you see, it's illegal to give land to somebody else that, what's populated with people. That's illegal. So in order to make it legal, they have to create some sort of document, which was the Balfour Declaration. But if you look up, for example, the transfer agreement, you find that the Nazis, that Hitler himself signed a contract with the Rothschilds, agreeing to transfer the Jewish people in Germany and in that region, in Europe, to Palestine. And this was before any Holocaust began, any rounding up of the Jewish people and putting them into labor camps. Okay? All of this transfer agreement was signed before any of that started. So the whole thing was planned by design. You have to create the problem before you can provide the solution that you want. So, for example, they have to displace the Jews before they can offer them a homeland. So the whole thing was by design. They wanted to, they began Um, the last translation of the Bible, the New Testament, was basically they inserted things about the Israeli, the homeland for Jews, the Israel, the state. They inserted it at the bottom. It's not actually part of the Bible, but they put commentary in. Who needs the commentary? You know, but it's part of that brainwashing. So the brainwashing that they did is so massive. It is in completely in every single public education system pretty much around the world. You know, we are taught a false history
No,
that serves
absolutely,
the
yeah.
Zionist agenda. Yeah.
No, absolutely, and you know, and that's part of what the real problem is that they've absolutely hijacked every bit of history, and bent it into a different direction. This is why you see, you know, so many different people are cast as victims in a lot of cases when they were really the aggressors. You know, depending on how things played out, if they happened to achieve victory, then they were great heroes as opposed to being terrorists. They weren't necessarily murderers or conquerors. They were liberators. You know what I mean? This kind of
Yeah.
thing has been twisted, you know, ever since there has been history written, it seems. You know,
Right.
a very smart man once said that, you know, those who are victorious write the histories, and he was extremely correct. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, now,
And media.
it,
They used the media. Media was, you know, their greatest tool.
well,
You know, because in
that's the reinforcement of all of
yeah.
that programming is, you know, of course it's real. I see it, you know, rebroadcast and referenced once again. I mean, you have to have your points of reference to be able to, you know, to continue the story onward, right? And this is, but this is what the thing is. Even now, today, as we speak, anything that goes on in that region, you know, you see that the Palestinians are painted as absolute aggressors. They are, you know, extremely dangerous, need to be contained.
And
You know,
Israel has some right to defend itself,
and
even though
Israel
they're
has this
illegal.
great right to defend themselves and everything else, even though their own admitted numbers show that, you know, well, you know, gee, our attack, you know, killed 3,000 people or whatever, and their alleged attack killed three. But we have a right to respond in this way. This is, I mean, I've never seen anything like it,
No,
honestly.
there
Uh,
isn't anything like it existing on the
right,
planet.
right. So getting back to what pulled you into this personally. So you
Okay.
started to see this and you did what? I mean, why was it that this absolutely
Well,
grabbed at
that
you?
was November. That was in November when they bombed Gaza last time. And come the beginning of, well, sometime in, yeah, so the beginning of December, actually, my mother had passed away. And I had the choice of, I finally had a babysitter, and I had the choice of either going and seeing my mother or going to Palestine. And at the time, I couldn't afford to fly to the United States. And my mother was already, uh, she was not cognitive. She wasn't recognizing anybody. So anyway, I decided, well, I couldn't sit at home thinking about her passing. I might as well go to Palestine. And I swear it came to me in a meditation. I was sitting in meditation, and all of a sudden the thought just popped into my head and it seemed to vibrate through my cells, go to Palestine. And it seemed to just come from somewhere else, but it came from within. And so I was like, okay, well, that's an idea. And then every time I was sitting in meditation, each day that passed, I felt stronger that I need to go to Palestine. So it was very much a divine inspiration.
Mm.
And everything worked out easily for me to go there. And I had learned about this village in the West Bank called Batir, which was once famous before the 1948 occupation began. Batir village was known as the vegetable basket of Jerusalem. It sits in the southern foothills of Jerusalem. It's like 3 kilometers south. And this village provided the majority of the produce to Jerusalem city. There was a train going through this village and into Jerusalem, and there was a train station. And during the 1948 war, if you will, it's not a war, it was, aggression. Basically, the train was confiscated and it's belonged to the Jews and Israel ever since. They demolished the marketplace, and within 2 years, basically, this village went into famine, where it had been, a thriving, rich economy. And this is the same story all across Palestine. It's just one example. So I knew some folks who were living there, and I learned about the things that were going on in this village. There was an Italian man working for UNESCO in Jerusalem. His name was Giovanni Fontana, and he devised a plan to save the village from the West Wall construction. Basically, the apartheid wall a lot of it has been built, like 520 kilometers of land has this 3-story high apartheid wall. But they're continuing to build all the time. And this wall, the plans that Israel has is for this wall to go directly through the village. And they basically cut one hillside off from the other at the railroad track, which is the bottom of at the base of like in a valley, between two hillsides, basically. Okay. At the base is this. So he created, working with local NGOs and the Palestinian population and the Batir Village Council, he turned the entire village into an open-air eco-museum. And since then, thousands of tourists have come from all over the world. And this is the first time a Palestinian village has opened up to international tourism. A lot of Israelis have come, 3 kilometers to the other side of the wall and come to a Palestinian village for the very first time. And there's many ancient sites in this village. There's an ancient Roman pool and irrigation system that has been used for the past 2,000 years in Batir. It's a 4,000-year-old Roman irrigation system. And this has been studied by universities, and there's so much to this village. There's all these, ancient sites there. So they're trying to save a historic place, and Giovanni Fontana actually succeeded in getting Batir awarded as our World Heritage Site by UNESCO in Paris. So that's a great accomplishment for Palestine, and due to that, it has delayed the construction of the West Wall.
Well, this is some good news, that's for sure. I'm sure that there is some uglier things that when you went there, you got to see them as well. Well,
this village is unique because it is, in 1967, they signed a peace agreement with Israel. It's the only Palestinian village that actually has a peace agreement.
Oh.
And so they're left alone. And it was very peaceful. I rented a house. It wasn't little, it was huge, but I rented a flat overlooking the hillside. It was so beautiful. And we were there for 6 months, right in the village. It was about a 3-kilometer trip from the village to Bethlehem City, which is Palestinian territory. Jerusalem is occupied.
I was going to bring that up, actually, because I know people that came from Bethlehem. And they do a lot of great woodwork in that area, utilizing the olive trees. So things are made of olive wood. They make they're actually the people that I know are Christians, so they make crucifixes and nativity scenes and things like this out of the olive wood. But it's really like beautiful craftsmanship and stuff, and the wood itself is actually really remarkable.
I saw their work when I was there, and the olive tree is actually very rare. This wood is very rare, and it's expensive now because the olive tree is so. The Israeli settlers are constantly chopping down the olive trees, and so it takes hundreds of years for it to become prime. I mean, an olive tree can grow for thousands of years. It can grow, like, at its peak, it's about 2,000 years old. So, there's olive trees in Palestine that were planted when Jesus walked the earth, when he was there. And these olive trees are everything to the Palestinians. They're farmers. They are farming families. And they take such good care of the land. And the majority of the farmers can't sell their crop, their harvest for the year because there's a lack of buyers due to the occupation. They're squeezed down economically as a collective punishment, by Israel.
Mm.
And, Israel has boycotted buying their olive oil, and so did Jordan. And those were their two major markets. So basically, the majority, more than half of Palestinian farmers, they can't even sell their harvest. And they don't have regular buyers necessarily.
Mm.
So, but you still see them out there all year round, taking care of the land, taking care of the olive tree. They love it. That's their life, and that's their connection to their ancestors and to their, forefathers. So it's very sacred to them. The olive oil is used for everything. There are like dozens of home remedies for all kinds of ailments. And they have these, things that are recipes, medicinal recipes that are passed down through generations. And, when I was sick one time when I was there and they were telling me what to do with the olive oil. Um, So it's really a beautiful culture. It's an incredible culture.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a little,
I was just speaking to the diversity of it. That's all. That
yeah.
there's a whole lot going on there. It's not just a monolithic, singular sort of society as is being portrayed all the time. That there are. That there are various types of individuals there. There are craftsmen, there are farmers, it's not just a bunch of ragtag, terrorists that are constantly looking to destroy the state of Israel. There are people there that
Well, you
are,
see, Israel and the Zionists want us to think that all Muslims are terrorists,
well,
and
right,
they do all kinds of little tricks to convince us of this. But the thing that's unique about Palestinian culture and the Palestinian Muslims, which are the majority, is that they're Sunni. They're Sunni Muslims. They're following the Quran. They're following the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, and they don't veer off course. So they're mild Muslims. They're real Muslims, in my opinion. I have never seen in any culture or any civilization more exemplar than they are in their um, in their practice and their understanding of the teachings. They get it more than anybody. There's so many saints in Palestine,
mm,
and and I learned more about Islam from the Palestinian people than from anyone, from anywhere. And I think that by them being under this oppression like that, it keeps them connected to their faith. It has that is how they have survived.
well,
They have so little, but they have their faith. They have an incredible faith. You can't imagine
right,
what. Mm,
and it's also absolutely interesting the connection to the olive tree because you could feel literally connected to your ancestors because your great 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 grandparents could have been taking care of the very same tree, which happens to grow a stone's throw from where your whole family lives, and this is a very interesting sort of symbolic thing I think, and
and the
probably
land is
something I
passed down. It's
yeah.
passed down through the generations to the family. And, the Palestinian culture, it not so much anymore because television has been introduced, but it revolved around storytelling.
Mm,
So, in the evening time, everybody would gather together. You'd have the elders and the young and the parent, three or four different generations all gathered together, and everybody would take turns telling stories. And this was a daily thing. And everybody looked forward to the story time, and the elders got a chance to speak. And, the elders have a very special place in the society. You never see an elder person, suffering alone. They're taken care of. They're part of the family. They have a place, and you see the young people with complete respect when they're around the elders. Absolutely, they show absolute respect, and they love them. They want to be around them. They want to hear their stories.
well, it's a totally different sort of cultural makeup than what we're used to over here. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
it's something that everybody says we lost at one point. I don't see where it is we actually had it, but okay. you
No, I
know,
don't think we ever had that either.
I don't believe that was ever really part of the American culture, as it were, to give such a nod to your elders. I mean, how many great statesmen and and great authors and everything else, great artists of all sorts, wind up dying penniless in their later years, and nobody takes care of them, not even their own children. Um, That's the reality of our culture. Sorry, but that's what it is. The old are generally
It
discarded.
is.
Not the way that I personally live, but it is
Not
the
only
way
the
that
old,
society goes.
yeah, not only the old, the old are valueless in the Western society. Is
Right.
in Finland here, same thing. You've got elderly people, they've 80-year-old women that are still strong, living alone, carrying bags of groceries, going shopping, doing everything for themselves, but they're alone. They may not see their relatives but once a month, once every 2 months.
Mm.
Those values they used to be here in the Finnish society, but they're not anymore. And this is just a mirror of, the entire Western civilization is living like this. But what's also terrible is that women, mothers, have no value in society.
Mm.
I mean, unless, you meet an individual that values mothers and respects that, then they're going to treat you with respect. But in general, there's no cultural tradition that respects and values mothers. In fact, it's the opposite. In America, the majority of the homeless victims are single women with children.
Mm.
In America, I mean, this is how we treat, and they're put down in derogatory terms like calling them welfare moms and things like this, as if they're free riding on the system. I mean, this is, either a grandmother or a mother taking care of her children who has no support from, say, the father or, family or something. I
Mm.
mean, whatever their situation is, and what they're getting from the government is just measly. It's like, breadcrumbs.
Well,
It's enough to eat, but not enough to pay rent. So they're homeless.
right.
And we have that society in the West where there's no value placed on mothers. And you go to Palestine, I had my kids with me. And I tell you, I was respected because I was with them. I was more respected because I was with them than had I been there alone.
Well, yeah, I mean, and plus the way that you were received as a guest there is an entirely different sort of feeling than you get in a lot of the rest of the world. The culture
Yeah.
itself is extremely different. And I wanted to sort of paint a picture for everybody about that. But the other thing is that of course you were in a good place, but I think you were privy to some other things that were going on there, and what's
Yeah.
happening. I mean, you've talked about the restrictions on trade, the destruction of things that existed long before the 1940s, for God's sake, that were absolutely decimated by the arrival of the state of Israel. But um, what
Yeah.
else did what did you see while you were there? I mean, because okay, we got as
Okay.
far as you were in this very nice place, and you
Yeah.
you were in a very good village, and these people have done a great job with the help of that Italian gentleman who helped to to sort of rehabilitate the area which was decimated prior to because of the state of Israel's. Okay, looks like I'm back on. Boy, I go to ask the uncomfortable question and things disappear. Loads of fun. I think I'm back on, so if you guys can tell me. Yeah, let's see. Hopefully you guys can hear me back at the network now. And excuse me, trying to get Ariana back as we're about to go to the meat of the issue. Oh, come on now. I tell you, I love this. It seems that at key moments, at key moments, This always happens. Okay, I'm glad the audio is back and running and trying to see what happened to Ariana. Let's see, we'll try her again. Ah, there you are.
Hi.
I have no idea why that went. It seems as though every time I go to a key point on this show,
Yeah.
something goes weird. Ah, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out either. If it was mine
Sorry.
or yours or what.
Yeah, but no. First, I couldn't hear you. You seemed like you were still there, and then the network disappeared. And all right. Anyway, I was trying to say that okay, we've understood the story so far that you got there, and this is a unique village because they actually are the only one that signed a peace agreement with Israel.
Right.
Um, they were rehabilitated by the efforts of this Italian gentleman. That's all
There were
wonderful.
many governments that donated, like French and Swedish and UN. I think maybe Germany too. They get grants. The small local NGOs get grants. So this was a collaborative effort, but it was led by Giovanni Fontana.
Right, and that was the the good things that were going on there. But as I was starting to say, there are a lot of other things that were happening that you were privy to while you were there as well.
Yeah.
And I want to speak to that. I don't want to
Okay.
necessarily focus on it, but
Mm.
this is something that is not being told. So if you don't explain it
Okay.
to us, believe it or not, this
Right.
story is not really getting out. I mean, occasionally I get a message from somebody over there who tells me about something terrible happening, but to be
Okay.
honest with you, I don't have a way to tell their story, and I can't ever seem to get that together.
Okay.
I want to
Well, I
tell
guess
the
I could
whole story.
start. I could start with when we flew into the airport in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
And what happened was somebody took me to a room, and I was interviewed for a while by a woman. They screen everybody that comes in to Palestine. Well, they ask you questions like, "What are you doing here?" They want to know where are you staying. They want a name and a number to the hotel, and sure enough, they will call and verify that that's where you're going. And then they tell you, "Do not go into the West Bank." And of course, being the sassy person that I am, I asked why, and she says, "Well, because it's not safe." And so, I didn't press it. I said, okay, and then she let me go. It was pretty easy. I was there with my kids. Maybe that was why, I don't know. If they sense that somebody is an activist, oh, they'll give them a very hard time. And they have sent people away right there in the airport. They don't let them come in. So basically you take a bus or not a taxi from Tel Aviv into Jerusalem. It's like a 45-minute ride. And this is all confiscated territory, that was confiscated by Zionists. And when you get into Jerusalem, all right, it's a mixed place. You have East Jerusalem, which is all Palestinian neighborhood. They were there before the occupation,
Right.
and they're slowly being ethnically cleansed. In East Jerusalem, they are demolishing houses, ordering evictions. They'll give an eviction to these Palestinians. They've been there for generations. Maybe you've got an elder grandmother who birthed her kids in this house, and they'll give a 24-hour eviction. And basically, they send the IDF troops in the middle of the night to bang on the door, traumatizing everybody. They go outside in their pajamas, they ransack the house, and then they serve them an eviction notice and say they have to be out by, tomorrow. And they have, usually nowhere to go. It's shocking and it comes by surprise. So they don't have anything planned. And anyway, that's their home. And then they're out on the street. And you whole families get thrown out onto the street like this. And then guess what? A Jewish family from maybe Brooklyn, New York, or wherever else, um, who comes to Israel for, and I'm doing quotations, who comes to
Right.
Israel for an aliyah, it's called, which is basically like a Jewish person returning to their homeland, so to speak. That's how
Right.
they term it. The Israeli government has recruiting services all over the world. And basically, they try to coax Jewish families to come and move to the occupied territories in what they call Israel, and they'll pay them money to do this. And they offer them, they'll give them a house. They'll give them a Palestinian house. They'll kick a Palestinian family out with a 24-hour eviction notice, and then they'll bring in somebody from, a Jewish family from New York. It's insane. So this is what's going on in East Jerusalem. But when you're in West Jerusalem, it looks like a very civilized place. It's very modern. It's like Europe. It reminds you of Europe. And you walk around and the people are, in my opinion, and they're not very friendly. The women were very snooty to me, and some of them wouldn't even talk to me. It was beneath them to speak to me, is what I saw. I have never seen people more arrogant in my life, and I hated it in the occupied territories. I hated being in the Israeli side of the wall. Absolutely. I did not feel good there at all. And my sons were furious. They were like, Mom, we saw both sides. We'd go into Jerusalem and then we'd come back to the occupied territories, and we'd come back to, Palestinian territory and, Bethlehem. And basically Bethlehem and Jerusalem, the two holy cities in that region, right? And Jerusalem is occupied and Bethlehem is part of Palestinian territory. They're completely cut off from each other. If a Palestinian living in the village, here's a good example. One day I was going to Al-Aqsa Mosque to see Al-Aqsa. And the family I was close with who we would make food together all the time. And there was one particular family I was very close with there. And when they found out that I was going to Al-Aqsa, they began praying and praying. And this was a very holy thing, just the fact that I'm going there. And I saw the emotions of what they went through, where, the mother in the family had not been to Al-Aqsa in, I think, 23 years or something. And, she remembers going there when she was a child. But they have a law where they don't allow Palestinians to go into Jerusalem without a permit. And it's very hard to get a permit. If you're over 55, I think it is, then you can get a permit, but you have to apply, and it's very difficult. And that is just like a 3-day permit or something to go pray at Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is their most holy place. And whether you are an elder or a young child, this is their holy place. Everybody wants to go to Al-Aqsa. And Israel is controlling Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they don't allow people to, you see riots on TV of, people getting arrested at Al-Aqsa. Well, it's because the Israeli Authority, they control the entire perimeter. And sometimes they're not allowing Palestinians to enter to pray. They're going there to pray. They don't have any weapons. They just want to pray. And the Israeli government does all kinds of little tricks to upset them and anger them and violate the law. And so you can imagine, here Batir is 3 kilometers from Jerusalem, and everybody's dream in that village is to go to Al-Aqsa Mosque. And here I was, able to, with a foreign passport, able to get on a bus and go into Jerusalem, to their most holy place. I mean, it was holy to me too, but what ended up happening was it was so hard for me emotionally that I couldn't go. Well, I did go there actually with my friend. But it took all the joy out of it for me. I felt very guilty. I felt so sad. I was so sad and close to tears the whole time because they couldn't go there, and I didn't want to go. But I went with a friend, a Palestinian friend that I knew in Jerusalem, that I've known for many years. She was my first Palestinian friend. And we went together. She's Muslim, and there's a certain entrance. It's a huge place. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, it's called the Moroccan Quarters. And you have the Dome of the Rock, which is the Golden Dome, and then you have Al-Aqsa Mosque. There's actually 2 mosques. Right. And there's several different entrances. They wouldn't let us enter in together in the same entrance. I had to walk all the way around the facility. And I chose not to go in, because I didn't want to go in without my friend, and I wasn't familiar with the area, and I didn't know how to meet up with her, so I just chose not to go in. And really, it was, I think, because I felt so guilty that it was so easy for me to go there
What
but not
what reason could they give for having you have to go to another entrance?
just to be jerks. You know, they these are the most, you got to understand the Israeli society, the good Jewish people end up moving out. They end up leaving because they can't tolerate, they can't be a part of the genocide that goes on in Gaza and the occupation. You know, it breaks their hearts, and so they leave because that's their way of protesting silently. They leave. They won't live there. They go live in America or somewhere else. So what happens is the good Jewish people with a conscience end up leaving, and what's left is you've got the people who are the hardcore right wing radicals that really want genocide. They really want to chase every single Palestinian into the sea. They want to chase them all into the Sinai desert, or into the sea. Get rid of them.
Like
That's their mentality,
well
and that's why
beyond the Likud type party rhetoric and all that. I
yeah,
mean,
that's why they voted for Netanyahu. Look what he did in Gaza. Who in their right mind would vote for him? You know, he's a horrible leader. I mean, anyway, he's a horrible leader. Not just the fact that he's a genocidal maniac, you know, megalomaniac or whatever he is. He's sick, man.
mm,
And, you know, and yet they vote for him. They want him in power. They want this. The Israeli people, when they were bombing Gaza, there was a poll taken, and they asked the Israeli people if they thought that too much force was being used in Gaza, and like 95% of the population said, no, not too much force. No, it's good. You know?
I guess it wasn't enough for them when they were bulldozing communities in there and all that, huh?
Yeah, it's not enough. And you got to understand one thing. People need to understand this, that Netanyahu is a liar, and the entire Israeli society is condition what's the word? The indoctrination of Zionism. Okay? Because Zionism is a whole lot more than just a homeland for Jews. It's an occult. It's an occult practice. It's an occult ritual practice, okay, that has a hierarchy. And the rabbis are like, you know, at the top. Everybody goes to the Jewish rabbis for consultation and advice, you know, and in the Jewish culture, they
Mm.
all go to the rabbis. And in Israel, the 98% of the rabbis are Zionists. So they're following this occultish practice, which is very evil, very evil. You know, and so the entire society is programmed and indoctrinated to believe that it's okay to lie to non-Jews. This is normal. This is to be expected. That they never want to reveal their true faith or their identity to the non-Jews. In fact, that is punishable by death. And so Netanyahu, for example, in order to get elected, he said to the Israeli population and the right-wingers, yeah, okay, no way will the Palestinians ever have their own state. They're not getting an inch of land,
Right.
okay? But then he retracts that, and he even apologizes. I saw some article today where he has apologized. He's a liar. Don't ever believe that. It is the Israeli policy, the Israeli state policy, the Israeli government policy to lie to the non-Jewish people, which is the rest of us, right?
Right.
So you have to expect that. When I was working with this team of journalists and activists who are on the ground in Gaza, and also some activists who are spread out in other countries who have social media pages, like on Facebook, like I do. And like, for example, Denny Cormier. Denny Cormier is an American activist, and I just did a recorded broadcast with him, and I'm writing an article which is going to be released really soon. He's an American activist and citizens journalist, and he's been living in Gaza for the past 2 years. And he knew he was there. He wanted to connect with the Palestinian people, to create relationships, and to show to the world that they're human beings. And so he's done that through his own eyes, and he's making a series of documentary films, short documentary films. Anyway, I cover all of that we cover that in the broadcast and in the article. But I met Denny this summer, and I was working with him. I was involved with a team of people there were many Palestinians, that were giving us breaking news as it was happening during the bombing campaign of the 51 days. And so I observed each and every war crime that the Israeli government committed in Gaza. And there is not even one thousandth or 1/10,000th of the crimes are ever reported in the media. And it was absolutely sickening to witness it. It took months to recover. We were all sick from it, psychologically and emotionally sick from what we witnessed. But I put myself through that because I had to. I just had to do it. I felt I had to do it. So we had all the breaking news coming into a central chat, and and we had people translating from Arabic into English. So everything as they were happening, we were reporting it on social media, and so the public could actually view it.
Well, what type of stuff did what are we talking about here that
Yeah.
was completely ignored by the majority of the media and was only coming
Oh,
through that way?
I don't even know because I'm not in America and I was not watching CNN. I was absorbed in my computer, and I swear to God, I slept with my computer. I rolled over in the morning and I opened my computer and I had my eyes on Gaza, and I fell asleep on my computer. I mean, my poor kids lost weight
Well, but
because I wasn't focused enough on them. But anyway, they've gained it back since.
I
So,
I have pretty much laid out for you what the mainstream media said about this.
okay.
Okay, it virtually nothing.
Mm,
Okay, it was basically, here come the Palestinians have launched some sort of rockets into our territory. There were some injuries, there were a few deaths, and we retaliated. Coming
okay.
directly from them. We
Okay.
retaliated, and that was about it. This had to be done. We have a right to defend ourselves,
Mm,
so on
mm.
and so forth. And that is about. I mean, that sums up just about everything.
Jeez.
Okay, you
My
could.
body I start shaking in my body.
Well,
Like I'm literally shaking in my body when I hear this.
but what were you hearing from
Yeah.
people on the ground there? I mean, because the way it looked is, sort of, well, listen, if you step back from it emotionally,
Mm,
okay, and you say to yourself, well, if there is a group of people outside of a nation attacking that nation simply because, meanwhile, you realize they flipped this on its head, where we are meant to believe that the Israelis are the victim here because they
mhm.
want to be, they want, the Muslims there wish to push them into the ocean, okay?
Right.
That they want to destroy the only homeland the Jews have ever had.
Mm,
That this is what we're meant to believe. Okay, that
right.
that is all they're doing is defending themselves against this sort of mad dog element, which is outside of the fence that they needed to erect to defend themselves, to protect their population. That
Yeah.
everything they're doing is justified to protect their population.
Mm,
Okay, that is the. I mean, I can't give you any more of a straightforward
right.
description of what it is we're meant to believe.
Okay.
Now, I know that's wrong.
Mm,
I know I'm being lied to. What is it that wasn't getting out? Because we didn't hear about really what
okay.
happened outside of some numbers. We got some
Okay.
numbers about casualties, and it's like 100 to
Right.
1 every time a day goes by.
Mm,
If you got 10 injuries in the alleged state of Israel, you've got 100 in Palestine. If you've got
yeah.
one death,
No, 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 no. It's not even like that. Do you want to know how many civilians died? How many Israeli civilians were killed this summer?
the reality, yeah, I mean,
Three.
3.
And I don't even, I question that if that's even legitimate. You know why? Because during the last three bombing campaigns, there were three Israelis that died each time. Israeli citizens. And we're not
Mm-hmm.
talking about the soldiers, we're talking about the citizens. Israeli citizens don't die. So why is it three, three, and three?
Well, you know what? I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure I read a story like that this summer on this show, and talked about how they said that 3 of their civilians had died, and they still had a count of, I'm telling you again, it's 100 to 1. So 300 Palestinians died, and 3 Israeli citizens died, but this was a completely legitimate response. this is what's going on, and we have to defend ourselves. And again, the same rhetoric I already told you. That is what is being pushed here.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know,
Well, I did write an article about this. I wrote, it's a, gosh, I forget the title now. It was a timeline of like the why of the Israeli Gaza offensive, I think it is. It's on the, if you go to the Liberty Beacon website, you type in my name, Ariana Love, and that's Ariana, and then love is in love. You'll find all of my articles, and if you scroll down, it just goes one after the other after the other. So you can find that timeline. The why, I think it's called the why of the Israeli offensive in Gaza, something like this. Anyway, basically, I cover. Okay, you know there were three Israeli settlers who were kidnapped. And the story goes that they actually were already dead. And the Israeli, Netanyahu knew they were already dead. But they lied to the public. And they used that as an excuse to invade homes throughout the West Bank. Now you got to understand, there is no more land left for a Palestinian state. The entire Palestinian civilization is under occupation. They're controlled from all borders. They cannot come and go freely. They can move around within their own little prison of land. And all the time that land is being taken. So the whole two-state solution thingy is just bogus anyway. There is no more land left. Israel controls it all. And they have since, 1986, I think. And I just wrote an article about that, did an interview with Miko Pilid. And he talks about this, the general's son. Anyway, okay, back to this summer. So basically, they raided hundreds, maybe thousands of homes in the West Bank. The Israeli soldiers, they were horrible. They'd occupy people's houses for days. They'd steal their gold. Their life savings, things like that. They had stolen a lot of money. And they just walk into anybody's house they want to, and a lot of people were killed, a lot of innocent people. The Palestinian boys will go out into the street, and some of the women, and they'll throw stones. They'll throw stones at the jeeps. They want them out of their villages. Stay out of my house. And so you can't stop them from throwing stones. It's you can only imagine, the emotion that they feel, and so they end up, some of them, getting shot. And this is what happened. So, but the Israeli government was bombing Gaza while they were raiding the West Bank for several weeks. They were also bombing Gaza, and they had been bombing Gaza for weeks before Hamas fired a single rocket in retaliation. Now that's the true narrative, but you won't hear that in the media. You're going to hear Israel's defending itself, blah, 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 Hamas rockets, Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. That's all you hear. But it's a bunch of lies. So actually, Hamas showed great restraint, and they held off for as long as they could because they don't want a war. They don't want to be massacred. They're used to this. They know how the Israeli government is. But there comes a point where they have no choice. Like when one day there were 16 people killed in Rafah when Israel dropped a bomb and 16 people were killed, and at that point was when Hamas decided to fire back the first rocket. And then that's what makes the media, not all the other stuff. Well, I mean, nowadays, since after the summer, there are a lot of reporters reporting on Palestine and reporting accurate information. There's a whole lot of articles. If you follow newspapers like, the Liberty Beacon and also, Middle East Monitor, there's a lot. There's a lot of newspapers that are reporting the truth, and a lot of journalists now too. I think that a lot of people woke up. We saw the policy of the Israeli state and how barbaric it is. But my experience as a journalist working, what I saw is that Hamas actually demonstrated exemplar behavior, exemplar war ethics. Their reporting was accurate. We all witnessed this. Even Denny Cormier was talking about it. That they never lied once. Their numbers were pretty accurate, were always accurate. And then as compared to the Israeli government that did nothing but lie. Nothing but lie. They even accused Hamas of breaking the ceasefire. And this is in my next article. Actually, I break this down and provide the evidence and show and how Israeli state lies. And you had Obama and Bekan Moon condemning Hamas after evidence had already been provided by the resistance in Gaza, by Al-Qassam, which is a branch of Hamas. They had already proven that the ceasefire was actually broken by Israeli government. The Israeli government enforced the Hannibal Directive in Rafah, which is basically when one of their soldiers is arrested. The Hannibal Directive was kept secret for a long time, and it's a policy that allows for the Israeli soldiers to the government to blanket bomb, like just if one of their soldiers is captured, they are allowed to kill that soldier and to kill everything and everyone that moves in the vicinity to prevent that soldier, to prevent them from having to make concessions for that soldier's release later. They don't want to negotiate with Hamas whatsoever. So they'd rather kill their own soldier. And this is what they did. They enforced the Hannibal Directive 3 times during the 51 days. And this was one of those times. There was a 72-hour ceasefire that was enforced by the United Nations. And right before the ceasefire took effect, the Al-Qassam brigades, the Palestinian resistance in Gaza, had captured, not kidnapped, sorry. They had captured an Israeli soldier, I think a couple of them. And so the Israeli government decided to enforce the Hannibal Directive, and they broke the ceasefire. But here's what they did. The media smeared and said that Hamas broke the ceasefire. And everybody read this and saw this. And then you've got Obama lying for Israel and Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, lying for Israel. Even after Al-Qassam had posted a tweet before the ceasefire took effect stating that they had captured these 2 soldiers. Okay? Yeah, right? So there was proof, there was evidence that they did not violate the ceasefire. They were communicating with the public, through Twitter. So even after the evidence was produced, Obama continued to lie. Why they do this, I don't know. I don't know if they actually know the truth or if they're ordered to do this or what. I don't know. But this incredible amount of influence that Israel has over the world's politicians and the media. So basically, a couple weeks later, I think it was, Israeli government admitted that they lied and that they were the ones that actually broke the ceasefire. But by 2 weeks later, no one's going to read that article. No one's going to see that the Israeli government admits to lying. You see, they only remember that Hamas broke the ceasefire. They only remember the first article that was released. And this is how they manipulate the masses. With disinformation. Because I follow the news, because I'm following it, I see everything. And I see their moves and I see what they're doing and how they're manipulating people.
Well, right. This has been like I said, it's the continuous rebuilding of the villain, and
Yeah.
they attempted to sell us the Palestinian villain for a long time. A very long time. I mean, even when I told you about when I was growing up. I mean, from cartoonish figure to truly nefarious figure, Yasser Arafat was supposed to be one of the scariest people on the planet. That was one of those things that was being pushed down my throat when I was a kid. Is that we don't have to worry about this because he's not here, but if he ever gets here, boy, we're in big trouble. And we gotta back our only ally in the Middle East.
Yeah. And Israel's no ally to the United States. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's laughable in and of itself. But well, there's a lot of ways we could go with that.
Yeah.
But
do you think that your viewers have any questions? I was thinking about, allowing people a chance to ask me questions because that might trigger. I want to know what it is that people want to know. Because I've got the knowledge all lodged in my head, and I'm not really sure what it is that the audience wants to hear.
Well, I'll tell you what. Anybody that wants to call in, we have the line open at 718-717-8296. If you're on my Skype list, I will gladly join you in. I have seen some stuff in the chat room. I haven't been looking at it lately, but I've seen various questions in the chat room before. I asked you a couple of them actually about
Okay.
Zionism and things like that. But anybody who wants to join in on the discussion and ask Ariana about some of the things that she knows and what she witnessed, I'd be more than happy to put them on with you. Uh, so,
Okay, cool.
so yeah, let's do that. Of course, there's a little delay, so it might take a couple of minutes. But but what I'm also interested in is getting down to the fact that yeah, we have been misled. We've been sold a bill of goods regarding who these people are. First of all, there is a whole culture which has been ignored. There is
We've been lied to about who the Israelis are too.
well, that's the other thing, is that we've been entirely lied to about the other side of this equation, and meanwhile, I mean, it's really a frightening thing, especially for those who have faith in, any of what I call I think of it all as being related to Abraham, and I'm not someone who practices any of the, any of those religions, but I recognize exactly how sacred sites and things that are mentioned in your texts, things that are of significance are holy to individuals and could spawn. But the thing is, this isn't even really like a holy war conflict. This is like something else. You know what I mean? It isn't a simple struggle between religious faiths to gain control of an area.
No, it's not a struggle between religions at all, but it is definitely prophetic. It's prophecy. I mean, it's written. These times and the things that are going on were written, thousands, hundreds of years ago, and even thousands of years ago. Some of this stuff is in the Vedic scriptures. I
Well,
mean,
right,
any of the holy text or whatever, they're all saying the same thing, and
right.
it's all going down in Jerusalem.
And that's the amazing thing. I mean, even with the Golden Dome and and the particular area when they rebuilt, where they rebuilt the temple and et cetera, all of this stuff has been described before.
Yeah, it's written. Most of it is written in its pure form in the Quran because the Quran was not like contaminated. Um, the Quran is probably the most all of what Islam teaches and what the Quran teaches is that all of the prophets had the same message. All of the divine incarnations or whatever you want to call them, brought the same message of what it's one religion. The religion of the earth, the religion of the nature of man and the soul and the spirit is one religion.
Mm.
And it's known as Islam to the Muslims, but it has had many different forms throughout history. It's just that Islam is the most preserved form because it came the most recently. And if Islam didn't come, if Muhammad was not born, peace be upon him, then we would not have the teachings anymore because they get perverted, they get contaminated after the birth of each of the prophets. They become perverted over time. So of course, we had to have Islam come and the Quran.
Well, right, and I mean, I've even had discussions with, with various people, which it took me a long time to be able to do this, but I talk to guys from Pakistan, I talk to guys from Palestine, I talk to guys from different places all throughout. You name a spot on the map, I've had a conversation with people,
Nice.
regarding this, and to get a perspective on it. And when they talk about the like the biblical idea of Jesus, okay, uh, they give respect to him, and they say that that you got to understand that there have been many prophets, and there are many that are honored, in our traditions and this and that, like, the whole explanation about, the child that was cast out into the wilderness and et cetera and all that stuff. I mean, they went through this with me step by step
Mm-hmm.
to get me to understand exactly how that sort of links to what I already understood. You know what I mean? And then after all this discussion, somebody finally gave me an English version of the Quran, so I could
Okay.
read it, which at
Wonderful.
which at the time wasn't exactly the most circulated thing in the world, an English English version of the Quran.
Yeah.
But I went through this step by step to understand, you know, to try and because it's portrayed as something else, you
Yes.
know.
It's portrayed as a religious conflict between Jews and Muslims, and
Well,
that's just bogus.
well, right, and then of course, in this country where there's a large Christian population, you are encouraged through your churches, through your reverends, all kinds of these guys. And I mean, everybody from televangelists to the locals will sit there and tell you that in order to be a good Christian, you have to support Israel, you know,
Right.
because it's part of you're aware of that, right?
These are Christian Zionists.
Or they're taking orders from Christian Zionists and think that they're doing the right thing because
Yeah.
in a certain context, you would have to be in support of a legitimate return of the historical Israel, right? You would. But the problem is that this is an illegitimate state. This is an illegitimate state of being, and this is an illegitimate occupation over land, an
And there,
oppression of a people that is
yes.
absolutely not part of what is being fed to you through your biblical text. And I can't seem to get this through to a lot of people who call themselves, devout Christians, or or whatever it is they call themselves. They're very much married to the Christian faith, and they think that this is one of the things that is their duty as a good
Hmm.
Christian, to be supportive
Hmm.
of this, the whole, what do you think Jesus would do kind of thing.
Yeah.
I say to them, well, do you honestly believe that, your Savior, your prophet, however you want to look at him, do you honestly believe that he would want to support the oppression and murder of innocent civilians on a constant basis? Do you think that he would want to support those who believe that they can simply take land from others? Do you think that he'd want to support people that are doing what this state of Israel that exists today is doing? And I can't get an
Exactly.
answer. I can't get an answer.
They won't answer that.
No.
Yeah, I bet that shocks them because they're not used to that kind of dialogue. And they're so willing to worship the state of Israel and this ideology of Zionism that they're willing to stop following the teachings of their messenger,
Right.
which is Jesus, right? So they're no longer Christians. They're what the actual term for them is Christian Zionists.
Yeah.
They're supporting genocide, and that's not a Christian value.
No, I have read, I've read the Bible, as it were, cover to cover. I did that when I was much younger, and I just have no memory of him ever supporting the idea of a genocide against a people. I
It's not his personality, is
it
it?
doesn't seem to go with his thing.
No.
It doesn't seem to be philosophically correct. But maybe it's
And
just my
that's common sense,
misunderstanding.
right?
I would think so. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I said, from the pulpits, from the pulpits on TV, from
Yes.
the whatever they call them, the altars, the stages, whatever it is called in your particular church of of choice, whatever it is, they are being exhorted to support the state of Israel.
That's
It's a
right.
it's a necessity because God,
Yeah.
and
Said
it's
so.
here we go with the justification. So I think, in a
What God is
way,
that?
but how do you justify what has happened?
Well, if the Christians only knew what the Israeli people really think about them, You know what I was told when I was in the West Bank? I was told this by the Palestinian people because sometimes they get the permission to go and work inside of the Israeli territory,
Right.
and then they'll mingle, they'll see things, they'll tell me their stories. And there was a guy that was working with like a tour group that was coming in, and they were coming in for different events, and basically he started to notice that every time that it came to, time to eat. Now it was in Jerusalem, and they were hosted by Jewish people, Israeli Jews, and they would feed them a banquet, right? And when it came time for the Christians, and they would be a Christian group, from some church doing coming to the Holy Land, that kind of a thing, right? Coming for a tour, meeting their brothers and sisters. This is what they think. Well, when it comes time to eat, guess what? All the Jewish people leave the room. They refuse to sit and eat with the Christians, because in their Talmud it says that the Christians are idol worshippers, and that in fact, once the Jewish people inherit the earth, conquer all the land and all the planet, and own the world, then they're going to kill all the Christians because the Christians are just idol worshippers.
Right.
This is
And
Zionism.
now you know what the response is to that, generally speaking,
Oh,
uh,
oh, one more
bec-
thing.
because
Also,
in the Quran,
yeah,
it says that you don't take Christians nor Jews to be your friends, or
right.
something like this, right? So, of course, all of these religions
That's
have this
out of
problem, don't
context.
they?
That's not exactly true. There's another part in the Quran,
Thank you.
many parts that say that they're all brothers and sisters from the Abrahamic tradition. But a Muslim cannot fully trust a Christian because they're indoctrinated with false belief system. You know, they did not listen to the message. That's the point. If a Christian is still a Christian after Muhammad came, they're not getting the message. They're stuck in the past. And Christianity in the Bible, it's tampered with. There's a lot of truth in there, and I loved the Bible. I read the whole thing. I studied it for like 5 years as a hobby. But my knowledge was incomplete without the Quran. Because the Quran, it's a continuation of the Bible, as I see it. They're pretty much, it's the same text. I mean, it's written in the same style too, and it's the same message. So people, who are of the faith, have to read the Quran. You have to. You have to have that knowledge. There's so much there in the Quran that is missing from the Bible. And that was how I felt after I read the Bible, that it was missing, that there was something still missing. And those missing pieces were answered when I read the Quran. But also in the Talmud, the Israeli Jews, they believe that the Christians are filthy as pigs, that they're no better than an animal, and so they are told not to eat with them. Actually, you would be shocked and amazed at the Jewish faith. And I'm saying that, because it's a cultural thing. It's like, I think a lot of the Jews, they just go along and they don't even really understand where this stuff comes from. Maybe they never read the Talmud. Maybe they never even read the Torah. But they still go and visit their rabbis for just about each and every major decision they're going to make in their life. And these rabbis are sick, psychopaths, molesting children, raping boys. You have the highest number of more than, there's a guy in New York, I can't remember his name, but he was a rabbi, and he's a whistleblower, and he's speaking out, and he has an organization that helps counsel boys who are raped, Jewish boys who are raped by the rabbis, or by the elders in the society. And about half, he estimates about half, at least half of Jewish boys are raped before they're 12. By the it's a culture of pedophilia. And then that's also why you have, these crime syndicates in Israel of organ trafficking and sex trafficking and child pornography and child trafficking. The FBI actually made a bust. I think it was like a year ago. Um, and then it just went underground. It was buried. The media doesn't report on it anymore. It was like released and then it was just buried. The biggest online child pet pornography ring was discovered in Israel.
Huh.
So,
Wasn't aware of that. No.
this is cultural thing. I mean, you compare that to America, okay? I don't want to just bash on the Israeli society. There are some good Israeli people. There are, and bless their hearts, but they need to speak up a little bit, a lot more. They need to be one, with the voices of truth and righteousness. Anyway, in America, you have, for example, you have a rape culture. I think it's like one, two, and three girls are raped are molested, sexually molested before the age of 12. And like something like, was it one in four or one out of three boys? I think it's one in four. Yeah, 1/4 of boys are molested before the age of 12. And then adult women, 2 out of 3 are raped. So we have these things are not really talked about, but we have a rape culture in America, where women are not respected. Here in Finland, you don't have a rape culture. A woman can walk around outside in the middle of the night and be perfectly safe. Rape just doesn't happen here. So, but in Israel, you have a culture that is psychopathic, and this has been studied by experts. It is they have a phenomenon. It's an actual, real phenomenon of mass psychosis. And if you look at psychosis, if you study psychosis, it is one of those incurable diseases. And I guess how you can measure psychosis is in there actually a science recent studies. They were able to hook up people's brains to a machine, and they actually found that you can measure if a person is psychotic or not. And basically, on a scale of 1 to 8, if you have positive thoughts, if you're the most positive thinking person, you're at 1. Okay, you're a healthy person, and you have positive thoughts put out. There's an impulse, that goes through the body of a certain vibrational frequency, which is healthy. But when you start worrying, you drop down to 2. When you start having more negative thinking and it becomes like more of a pattern, you drop down to 3. And by the time your thoughts are at 4, level 4 of negative thinking, you're in post-traumatic stress disorder. Like the Palestinian population, who are constantly traumatized and under occupation. They're in a chronic state of they're kept under collective punishment in a chronic state of post-traumatic stress disorder. And so they live with a high level of stress. Now, a psychopathic person, that level drops down to 8, where they don't have any positive thought impulse running through their body. That's a psychopath. And the Israeli society is full of them. And, you can see this by their voting patterns. What do they want? They want the elimination of the Palestinian people. They vote for psychos like Netanyahu. They want him as a leader.
Well, isn't it possible that they've been kind of programmed also that there is a significant population that is simply, not awake to the reality because they're just buying what their state-run media is selling them, and they're not necessarily psychopaths who believe that, murder and decimation of a society is correct, but there is the possibility. I mean, I know that this
Yeah,
isn't
they're of course in denial, just like the American society.
right.
Also, Israel and America are very similar in that way. Heavily brainwashed population. Yeah, they're brainwashed from a young age. Actually, Miko Pilaid's wife, Nerut Pilaid, um, she wrote. Oh gosh, she wrote a book. I think it's called. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the brainwashing of the. Oh, through. She talks about in her book. It's in my article. I have to. Go back to that. The article I did on Miko Pilaid, Zionism, Palestine without Zionism, it's
Yeah,
called.
I just posted that article in the chat room on the
Okay.
network. So
Oh, great. Okay. In that article, I talk about Nerut's book, and she's talking about the education system and how children are brainwashed from a very early age in the Israeli society. So, yeah, it's brainwashing. Heavy brainwashing, but also the state itself, they're attracting these types of people. Who in their right mind would move? Who could possibly move to a foreign land, believe that you are God's chosen people and take a home that belongs to somebody else. I mean, who has the heart to do that? Obviously a not very feeling person. So this whole Aliyah where they're inviting Jewish people to move to Palestine and live in the Israeli territory, they're inviting these kinds of people. They're inviting settlers. These are right-wing, radical Jewish people who are filled with hate, many of them psychopaths, whatever, however they became that, they are that before they even come to Palestine. And so the Israeli society, they're building a society of psychopaths. They want the Zionist agenda of those who are in control is to take over. They want their greater Israel. This is part of their indoctrination and their programming is that they believe that there's a certain territory that belongs to them outside of Palestine. It includes Syria and Jordan and parts of Iraq. And this is their greater Israel, and they're going to do everything in their power to accomplish this and to take that land. So they create, groups like Hezbollah because they have to have an enemy to fight against in order to be able to invade and take over territory. And nothing's going to stop them. And written into the Israeli policy, I think I talked about this last time, is the Samson option. The Samson option is, it was discovered recently. They keep this stuff secret for as long as they can, but then somebody ends up, becoming a whistleblower and talking about it.
Right.
And the Samson option basically is that if they fail in getting their greater Israel, they are going to nuke everybody. They're going to nuke the whole planet, including themselves. Huh. Now that is definitely a policy of a psychopath.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, if that's what the final solution is.
That's like the last resort that they bail out with a big bang, I don't believe that's going to happen. I really don't. I don't think nuclear power is going to be allowed to happen on the Earth. But anyway, that's their mindset. And it's good to know this stuff. I mean, we have to be armed with the knowledge, and I would not believe anything that ever comes from the Israeli government or any of their politicians, ever. It's all lies.
All right. One of the excerpts from the article, because you were referring to, you have this part about the Civil Rights International Network. Published in its first 2015 report that some 700 Palestinian minor children are arrested per year and face ill treatment by the Israeli occupation forces. Yeah. Okay. Subject to torture, forced confession, sexual assault, solitary confinement. Underage minor children, some as young as 8, are held as political prisoners in Israel. Detention centers for months on end and without due process.
Sometimes years.
When they are charged, it's for the offense of stone throwing, and confessions are forced under torture. About half of these minor children are taken during targeted night raids of their family's home. So this is the other thing that's going on. Not only are families being displaced, but some of their children are being snatched.
Kidnapped. Right from their beds. Right from their beds. They're woken up in their sleep, and they're tied to the bed. Many cases, these are the children's testimonies. They get tied to the bed, and they'll ransack the home. They'll tie everybody up in the family. They'll put their hands behind their back, tie them up. If it doesn't matter the age of the children, their hands are tied behind their backs too, and they'll take one of the children. Usually if they enter into somebody's home, somebody's going to be taken. At least one child. And they do all of that. I mean, the detention centers, there's, about 40% of the children, no, wait a minute. I can't remember the percentage, how many are taken from their homes, but it's almost half. And then 40% are sexually assaulted. That's a pretty high number. It's almost half also. But considering that this is a society where the rabbis are doing pedophilia, and that's part of their initiation, actually. This is part of like their whole religious practice, of Zionistic religious practice, is molesting boys, raping boys. And girls too, if they prefer that. But a lot of them are homosexual. Um, anyway, so they hold these kids in detention centers, and they're not given, they have no due process. You know, many times there's no charges even. And they basically can do whatever they want. They're not allowed the right to see their family. And, you know, they're prisons. Children being held in prisons. And at least I think it's about half of the kids in Palestine have been inside the prisons, and many of them more, you know, 2, 3 times they've been arrested by the time they're an adult. Just about, a majority of the Palestinian kids, the boys especially, spend time in Israeli prisons as political prisoners, as children. And if they don't get the confession that they want, they'll torture the kids, and they put them in solitary confinement. I talked with guys that, you know, had total PTSD. It stays with them forever. You know, it stays with them even into adulthood, and it's hard for them to talk about it, and you'll see their bodies shaking a little. And you know, they told me stories though how, you know, the solitary confinement starts with, like, they're in a dark room, and there's a light. The light is like red, and it's constantly on, so it's very disturbing, and it's a cement floor. They have no bed, and they're there for days on end, maybe weeks, and then they're taken out and they're tortured, and they're, you know, tied to a chair, and they're beaten in certain places of their body where it doesn't show marks, because the Israelis are very trained in this. They're one of the most trained military in the world, you know, in torture tactics and things like that. Also Syria. But anyway, Israeli government, I mean, the IDF is like, you know, torturing the kids, and then they bribe them. They try to bribe them, or they use torture to try to get a confession. They threaten. They say that they'll harm one of their family members. They'll rape their sister, or they'll arrest his brother, or something like this. And then they will get, you know, it's been proven that if you torture somebody, you can get forced confessions. Somebody will confess under torture to stop the torture. And
Yeah.
so that's what they do. And then they'll get a confession of stone throwing. They might even get the kid to give them a name of somebody else. And then, you know, then they consider that to be legal. That's the legal document of the confession.
Yeah, and any confession that is had under duress is questionable at best. You know, because you know the joke is made sometimes that, you know, people would confess to being the grassy knoll shooter if you torture them long enough. You know, whatever it is that you want, whatever answer you want after a while. Um, that's the reality of it. I mean, I've tried to make that point on other shows for sure, not just with you, but you know, in relation to the way that people are treated, that's for sure. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and speaking directly to a lot of the other things that are going on, I mean, aside from the displacement, aside from the you know, the ridiculousness of, you know, needing to launch missiles on people that are throwing rocks, you know, there's been all sorts of stories that have come out, you know, since the summer, but still, it's not making it to the mainstream. It's really not making it there.
It's not. It was never told. You know, the crimes that went on in Gaza would blow people's minds. Blow people's minds. You cannot imagine, I mean, bombing every day, all the time. And, you know, somewhere. And then sometimes it would let up, but then it would get stronger in the nighttime when it's most terrifying, when there's no electricity. And it's, you know, the most terrifying. The bombing intensifies. So nobody gets any sleep. And the drones flying over constantly, 24/7. Doesn't even matter if there's a ceasefire or not. Bombs going off during the ceasefire. Israel didn't respect any of the ceasefires. Okay, they're still bombing in certain areas, and people are dying during ceasefires.
Yeah, well, that's the other
Every
thing
one of them.
I've been told that before too. That while there's an alleged ceasefire in place, that you know, that there's still stuff being launched into Palestinian territory. You know, that's just ignored. kind of by anybody who's reporting from that area. It's like it's not even there. But the
Yeah.
moment that the moment that Hamas retaliates, for the fact that they've been fired upon for a week, and they fire a rocket, they're the ones who violated the ceasefire, according to the news, right?
Well, Hamas is sort of, okay, Hamas respected the ceasefire. They did not shoot rockets during the ceasefires. Okay, Hamas respected the law, and they demonstrated exemplar war ethics. I couldn't fault them for anything. And yet Israel did nothing but lying. And during the ceasefires, they're still bombing in certain areas, just less. They don't stop. Nothing stops these people. And that's what you don't hear. I mean, few articles here and there. I read those articles too, but most people never see them. I mean, you had people were being massacred, and there was no safe place to go in Gaza. People were running. People were sleeping in the streets. They were sleeping in the parking lots of hospitals. They people who had lost their homes, or they were told to get out of a certain area. In the northern part of Gaza, the Air Force dropped leaflets, telling people to leave their houses. So you had like 100,000 people running to Gaza City with nowhere to go, nowhere to stay. If they were lucky, they had relatives they could stay with. But there was just no safe place. And this whole thing about, sending a text message. Okay, Israel has all the phone records because they own the Jawal, that they own that phone service. And so they've got everybody's number, everybody's name that's got a cell phone. And if they want to target a house, well, they've got the cell phone numbers of the people in that house. And so it's just part of the psychological warfare. They'll send a text message, 5 minutes to get out.
It's Israeli companies really own or have access to all the phone records in this country too. So not a surprise there.
Oh, yeah. All of our information, actually, that the NSA gathers from us goes straight to a company in Israel. So Israel has access to everything. Everybody's information is going to Israel. And the NSA can target anybody in any country that they want to. And they do. But they have special deals with like the UK and certain countries, France. Certain countries they have special arrangements with, the NSA does. And then all of that information is sent to a privately held corporation in Israel, which of course the Israeli government has full power, I think, to look at anything they want. There's no legal recourse. There's no restrictions. So yeah, this Israeli state, it concerns everybody. It concerns every nation on this earth because they are a threat to us. They are threatening us right now as we speak. The Samson option is a threat. Their nuclear, weapons, 300 nuclear warheads and hydrogen bombs are a threat. This is a psychopathic society that is programmed to not value anybody's life but a Jewish life.
And meanwhile,
nobody else has values. We are their slaves.
And meanwhile, you realize that entire thing which you've just explained about the Samson option and about how they'd be more willing to destroy everybody on the planet along with themselves and all of that. You realize that is exactly the same thing which has been lifted up and superimposed right on places like Iran, okay, and Syria.
Mm.
And
right, they're projecting. They're trying to say that the Muslims or extremist Muslims are like this.
Well,
they're ready to kill themselves and everybody else and blah, blah, blah. But, on another show, I'd like to get into that. I'd like to explain and make a distinction between the different factions of so-called Muslims and who's doing what, and kind of explain that, because we need to understand that. We need to be armed with that knowledge because Israel is using it to manipulate us and to make us afraid.
Well, right. There's a huge difference between a Sunni and a Wahhabist. I mean, it's, nobody even brings up Wahhabi Muslims,
Right.
in this whole discussion. Meanwhile, I mean, this is my opinion, and this may be very uneducated, and you can correct me. But if any sect which has splintered off from the Islamic faith is dangerous, it's those guys.
Absolutely. And it's no longer Islam.
Well,
We are
as I
not
said, it's
allowed to make
splintered.
sects.
As I said, it's splintered from
Yes.
it. I didn't say it was Islam itself.
But you
I
know
said this
what?
from it.
This will blow your mind. Wahhabism didn't even it wasn't even inspired from Islam. Do you know that the man who created Wahhabism was a Zionist? He was Jew. He
No
was a
kidding.
Zionist Jew, and he was a murderer, a filthy, lying, murdering, thieving scoundrel. And he so-called changed his name to an Arabic name, and he so-called became Muslim. And he created Wahhabism. You'll find the same thing with the Shia too. Shia tradition. That was 1500 years ago in Iran. It was a Jewish Zionist man. Now these Zionists, they've been at this for a very long time. They planned far in
See,
advance.
what's weird to me is I was meant to believe that this was during the time when there was an imprisonment of a particular leader, and there was the murder of a guy named Ali, and this is how there became Shia and Sunni. You know,
Well, I have got to research this more deeply and also write about it and provide evidence because if I just start talking about it, people might, question me. And it's like, I'm saying this because if somebody doesn't say it, how is anybody going to know? How
well,
is anybody in the West going to
well,
know these things
well,
if they
that's
don't ever hear it?
right. That's the thing. I would love to have you write an article about that, explaining it, because I don't think anybody in the West understands this. Unless they're part of the faith. I don't think they would understand it at all. And I don't even claim to have a great grasp on it. I'm just telling you that I have questions. you know,
Yes.
I don't necessarily understand it all. I do understand what the Wahhabist point of view is, and
Yeah, it's sick.
it's pretty
Very sick.
sick. Yeah, you
So
know.
is the Shia. If I may say, I mean, I'm sorry. I love people. And if there's a good-hearted Shia, God, bless their soul. I'm not going to hate them because they're Shia, because of their beliefs. If they have a good heart. I mean, it's all about having a good heart anyway. The most powerful force in the universe is love, and anybody's capable of it. And this is measured by science. So, I'm not racist. But the thing is that this is an indoctrination. We have to understand that. And the Shia indoctrination, they don't follow the Quran. And they don't believe in the Prophet Muhammad. They think he's a false prophet. And they think that Ali, I think who is his cousin, is the actual prophet. They believe that the message from Archangel Gabriel, which came to Muhammad, was accidentally delivered to the wrong person. And this is what they believe.
That's odd because, of course, angelic lore as it is. I mean, that's what I describe it as. But I mean, this is part of the deeper part of the text is actually universally shared by all three of the Abrahamic faiths.
Jews,
So
Muslims, and Christians are brothers and sisters, and that's what the Quran says, and that's what Sunni Muslims believe. That's what Palestinians believe. They all told me this,
well,
which goes against the Israeli narrative that they say that the Palestinians want them all dead and hate them. No, they don't hate Jews.
mm,
They don't even criticize them. They know Zionism is the enemy.
wow,
And, you'll be also Bashar al-Assad, which is a whole other topic, but I'll just throw it out there. He is also the Alawite. He's from the Alawite tribe, and the Alawites are a faction of Shia.
really?
Yes, it is. And he so-called converted to Islam conveniently to become the president of Syria because in their constitution, because 80% of Syria are Sunni Muslims, in their own constitution, they say that the president has to be Sunni Muslim. So what did they do? They changed the constitution. Or no, he converted to Islam. So-called. I don't believe it for, look, he's genociding. A true Muslim doesn't do that. But they also changed the constitution too, so that he could come into power. But that's another thing. I'll get into that maybe another another time. Actually, I want to write some articles about this.
Yeah,
But
I think it would be enlightening because as I said, the mainstream narrative,
Mm.
which, like I said, all I really know is that it's garbage. Okay, that's all I know. I don't know what the reality is, necessarily. Like I said, it was explained to me about this whole thing about Ali and how the Shia were basically created because they believed in his way, and he was supposedly imprisoned, and they
Hmm.
killed off his family or something like this. I don't know where that
Yeah.
story comes from, but you know what I'm referencing.
Yeah, it was about 150 years after Prophet Muhammad passed on.
Right.
And it was the whole Shia tradition, the whole Shia faith. It doesn't even resemble Islam, if you ask me. And it was created by a man who was a Jewish Zionist. He was a Khazar, a Khazarian Jew. And if you know anything about the Khazars, these were the conquerors. They conquered in the most horrendous and horrific ways, with no respect for, no ethics at all in war, just pure conquering and doing disgusting, filthy things when they did conquer. But that's historic. The Khazarian Jews were warring people. And right now, the majority of the Israelis, they have this Khazarian bloodline, and this was proven. Their DNA does not resemble the Israelites. The original Israelites that's actually talked about in the Bible were from, yes, they were in Palestine, and they migrated out and they went down to Africa, and you can find these tribes in Africa that are still speaking Hebrew.
Got a question from the chat room. What about
Okay.
the reports in Yemen today about the bombing of a mosque and all this? I mean, the general reports coming out of Yemen. Do you know anything about that?
I didn't see the news, no.
Uh, yeah, well,
I
it's,
can't follow everything.
no, I
It's
understand. It's
so
just,
there's so much happening. I think I read 10 articles a day,
no, I understand. But
but
while the
I can't even
ISIS,
see
while
it
the
all.
while the ISIS crisis is being absolutely ratcheted up in the mainstream, they're talking about
Yeah.
the fall of Yemen essentially to them, and we're evacuating our people and our military. Apparently, this is what's going on. I mean, you're aware of that, right?
No, well, I mean, yeah, it's progressing. Um, I think that the reason why the US government is there in Yemen is because there's some ancient technologies, other planetary technologies. Also in Iraq, they're excavating, they're finding these old sites and stuff, and there's been, information leaked about that. Um, they're crazy for the technology, any kind of weapons technology that they can get their hands on. These secret government Zionist cabal will, they'll go after that. They're very threatened by Islam. You got to understand the sort of I call the Rothschilds the king of the Jews because they created the state of Israel. That's their baby.
Right.
And, they're following an ancient pagan tradition, a pagan religion, which is also, I haven't looked too much deep into it, but none of what they're doing can be benign because they're very educated people, but they are enslaving all of mankind, and the money that they have is stolen. It's stolen from us.
There, there,
There's no.
there's a bit of a minor misunderstanding about the pagan religion, to be honest with you, because
Mm.
that would be the closest thing I could identify myself to.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and I got to be honest with you.
Well, it's the worshiping of gods.
Well, yeah, that's true, but
That's what.
the description that is used nowadays for it is really bizarre and getting stranger. The concept of demonology and things like that is not part of it. A lot of this has been perversed and twisted over time, quite a bit. And
Maybe
but
there's like two
that's
kinds of paganism. There's like, if you will, the pure form is being in touch with nature.
well, it's really basic. It's sort of like the idea that all living things are interconnected because life itself is is a singular thing. That's really what I
That
would
was
identify.
Christianity in the beginning. That's how they worshipped, you know.
Well, yeah, but they adopted a lot of that from pre-existing stuff, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So, you know what? We've only got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Hard to believe that we went through almost 2 hours, and I'm also kind of surprised that nobody wanted to call in. That's odd. I don't know. Maybe the phones aren't working, but that happens to me every once in a while. And I do got to apologize because I'm not really on top of my game today because I'm just still not feeling well from the weekend.
You were great.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. But I want to. I put the article that we were discussing before when you were talking to the guy who wrote the General Sun and all that. Uh,
Yeah, Miko Pilid.
right. I couldn't remember how to pronounce
That
it.
was a great article. He talks about a one state. He refuses to see Palestine as anything else but one state, one nation.
Mm.
And it's a really beautiful message that he has. I was very humbled by him.
And yeah, really interesting article. I scanned through it while we were talking too, and that's why I pulled that one excerpt out. And I encourage you guys to read that as well at thelibertybeacon, all one word.com. Look for Ariana Love on there. Also, you're doing broadcasts now. You're doing radio shows. I know that besides mine. I
Yeah,
don't know if
and
you,
I'll be, we
go ahead.
have a new website called the Middle East Rising. So I'll be putting, having a broadcast and also putting my articles onto that website. We're just finishing it up right now.
Right, I've been waiting for that website for about a year.
That's part of the Liberty Beacon, yeah.
Yeah,
It belongs to the Liberty Beacon. And yeah,
and
what
it's
else?
really, really going to be unique because you're going to have a lot more real information coming from people that are actually there, as opposed to this secondhand, reporters that drop in and are standing in Tel Aviv to tell you about what's happening in Gaza. That kind of nonsense. The Wolf Blitzers of the world, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I said it that way. I don't care. And all of these other talking heads that half the time I think they're standing in front of blue screens anyway, or green screens, whatever it is now. So
Yeah.
the reality is you're actually going to have people that are on the ground there giving you their experiences, and it's going to have a distinctly Middle Eastern look to it and everything else. And we need to remember sometimes, they do tend to lie to us about a lot of things. And one of the things that I like to stress is that when they tell you somebody's a terrorist, it doesn't make it so just because they told you. Keep that in mind. And whatever it is you want to close out with, Ariana,
Anybody who
about a
resists,
minute. Go ahead.
they want people to believe that resistance, which is our international human right, like the Syrian people in Syria, resistance is law. It's our right, but they want to paint us as terrorists. Anybody who resists, occupation or tyranny is a terrorist, and that's false. People have the right to resist. That's international law. Um, I don't know what else to say. This has been wonderful. Like I could get a lot out off my chest, talking for 2 hours.
And we can definitely do this again another time. I don't know what we're going to do next week, but we'll figure it out. If you want, you could definitely come on for at least some of the time next week. But we got to figure it out with Roger.
Yeah.
And but we'll sort it out, and definitely we'll do this again and discuss more issues and let people know more about what's going up on there. I want to thank everybody who decided to tune into the Ochelli Effect here on UCY.tv. I keep forgetting to mention the name of my own show, UCY.tv/TOE, and whatever other mechanism you decided to tune in and listen to us, whether it be on your fondle slab of choice, your computer, your telephone, whatever it is. I thank you for giving us a chance to at least speak to you for a little while and give you something else to consider. We will give you things that the rest of the media doesn't necessarily want you to hear. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm trying to do. And every once in a while, I may succeed. Thank you, Ariana. I do appreciate your time. I appreciate your efforts. I had no idea where we were going to go with this.